Hi. So basically, you asked me in class how I had done the sound effects and stuff for class. So I wanted to go ahead and just make a video because I felt that that would be a lot easier. So basically, when you're in Adobe Audition, sorry, I just had this pulled up just to kind of test to see if I was even recording what I needed. But on this top left corner, oh, is it actually showing? In the top left corner of Adobe Audition where you can add files. So I always have a folder on my computer of different sound effects. So here's the frog, the alien sound. This is the voice. Let's add in the music. I think and we'll just work with those. And so when you're working through Adobe Audition, like if I had already recorded my voice, you can work in waveform on the top left here where it says waveform. That's where you can work with just the individual, this stuff. If you're like, oh, I forgot to do compression, so you want to, control all or, select the specific parts and like effects, go into compression. I always like to, I'm about to give away a secret right now. I go to single band compressor. And hopefully, I don't think the window's coming up. The effect single band compressor little window under presets. If you go to the drop down menu, you can go down to voiceover and then apply. You can change the ratio and the stuff that they have in there, but if you hit apply, it'll compress it down to sound more like a voiceover. But I want to show you real quick. This is what this sounded like before.
Don't settle for boring. Light up the room with no sun neon lights.
So that's how that sounded before. But if we could do Control Alt, go to Effects. Like I said, amplitude and compression, single band compressor, drop down menu, click to voiceover, which I already have selected, apply. It'll change it. Sounds more like this.
Don't settle for boring. Light up the room with no sun neon lights.
And you'll notice that the volume is also a little bit lower. So what I'll do is I'll select it all. And on the right side of the screen here in Adobe Audition, it shows you the volume, the decibels. And so right here, the -3, this line all across, we want the average to be about that line. So you've got this tiny little menu bar that should pop up somewhere. You can move it around. I usually just kind of, whoa, holy crap, my bad. I usually have mine in the middle of the screen here, but you can up it to have the average close to that -3 line. And then you can even like zoom in, and if you're like, okay, but this specific spot is way too loud, you can select him and kind of bump him down a little bit. I don't know if that's considered too much work for the voiceover stuff. It's better to practice speaking in such a way that it is already going to be more even. But if for some reason you need to do that fine tuning, obviously you can. But now it will be closer. You remember this bar down here at the bottom. We want the average to be -3, so you can keep an eye.
Don't settle for boring. Light up the room with no sun neon lights.
Cool. Yeah, it's loud enough. Yay. Cool beans. So let's say you've done all your work with your audio and you're like, okay, well now I want to add everything else together. And you go up to the top left here. So how we were in waveform, go into multi-track. And then you can name it. So we're just going to go, I'm going to name it to test. You can save it where you want. And it will, you've recorded as mono, but once you get into the multi-track, it's like, oh, okay, cool, stereo. So then I'll take the retail wave. So this was my voice. So I'll slide this over into this top one. And your question was, how are you mixing the sound effects? So I'll throw in my other sound effects into, ignore that it's a video. So that's another secret is I find stuff on YouTube that doesn't have copyright. It's the royalty free stuff. I'll find it on YouTube and do a screen capture of that, which if I can show you how to do that in another video, but basically you could just drag this in and like ignore like, hey, I don't want the video aspect. I just pressed delete when I clicked on the video reference up here. Cause that's what that was, it was, hey, here's your video. Where do you want this and all of this in case you were trying to create a video with this sound, but you can just click on that video and go, no, go away. I just want the sound. And so what I will do a lot of times is I will slide this out of the way and maybe play with this to figure out where do I want my sound effect? And so, and then what I'll do is I'll take a mental note, I'll listen for when I talk about the frog.
With no sun, neon lights. Looking for a space frog?
Obviously, this is the section, so I'll put this in the front here, and you can even, stretch this to make it smaller and be like, okay, I really need to get I need to be able to see this better. And so we'll bring our space frog in. Or our frog. Right now it's just a frog. So you can see at the top here, you've got this big, huge file. So if you hover over the edge here, you'll see the little red figure, the little bracket. That's how you can shorten this. We'll go to the other end, make that bracket so we can grab and just cut it shorter. Let's say that while I'm working on this, I'm like, I want there to be more space in between here. There are two ways you can do this. One, you can select the frog file and go to waveform and go, okay, cool, I'm going to fine tune here. Or when you're in multi-track, which you can also do this in waveform if you see these little logos up in here, this is a razor blade. So what you can do is, really get in there and go, I want to cut out this middle section. I'm going to take the razor blade tool and I'm going to cut this to like here. But you can see it forms a bracket too. So you can use the bracket to shorten these sections, but you can go, I don't want this, and press delete. And then you can manually bring him where you want. It's right here.
Space frog?
Yeah, space frog or whatever, So I'll put my sound effect underneath that dialogue. So then we hear,
looking for a space frog?
There you go. But if you're like, well, my sound effect is too loud. So we're in track 2 for the frog, right? It says right here, track 2. This is track 1, track 2. As you add, there'll be different tracks. They're also different colors. Yeah, that's fun. So when you're in track 2, this right here is the volume. Obviously, it's like, this isn't 0 decibels right now, but this is the bar of how much you can raise and lower from the original volume. And so a lot of times what I'll do is you can either select it and go, okay, well, I want this to be about, -5 decibels quieter. Let's do -10 just so you can really hear. We'll go back to here, play it again.
Looking for a space frog?
It's a lot quieter, right? Maybe we'll do -20, no, not 320, holy cow, -30. It's going to be so much quieter.
Looking for a space frog?
We can't hear anymore, so we'll bring it back up. If we have it just at 0, remember, it's too loud.
Looking for a space frog?
That's a loud frog. He's interrupting me. So I'll usually do, I don't know why, but -6. For some reason, my brain does that. But let's say you don't want to type it in. You can, you've got these little arrows on either side of your mouse. You can pull it to what you want. And you can see even the little clock looking thing is like, oh, ooh, this way? Okay. So then we'll also add in, I think this is our spaceship sound. And what I'll do is if I don't want to slide this all the way over to go where there are no other sounds to listen, and I'm like, okay, but I want to hear what part of the sound I want to use without these being in the way. We'll delete that video. You can go over here where it says M on each track and mute them. Just for the time being. That way you can really listen. So maybe I only want to use this weird random section, So I'll cut that down, slide it over to where I want. Maybe I'm like, oh, well, now it's a little bit longer. What's cool is that you can, if you want it to match and you start to slide, it'll go boop. Oh, right there to match him. Cool, I got you. Boop, perfect. That way, it's exactly with the frog. If this was completely filled with sound, they would be exactly the same. So now, if we unmute these, listen to them together.
Lights. Looking for a space frog?
Obviously, this is too loud, so we'll bump this down. Maybe he's even quieter than the ribbits. We'll try this.
lights. Looking for a space frog?
This isn't exactly where I want the sound to be in the whoo, you know, I might do it a little bit different, but this works for example. You'll notice that the sound cuts off so abruptly. Like it's just, now it's sound, now it's not. You know, it just, and it's done. So what we can do here is when you look in this, and there's this tiny little thin line above, not this one that says pan, but the one above it says volume. When you click on that, it'll add this little dot. If there's a specific spot that you really want to make a certain volume, you can add a point here or wherever you want, add another point and decide, okay, well, from here to here, I want the volume to change this much. And then you're like, oh, well, I want it to start to come back up once it gets to here. And then it'll, you know, I want it to go back up. But maybe I want it to take a long time to get back up to that volume. You can do that. But if you're like, I don't want a linear, just maybe I want it to be a little more gradual. That's what the spline curves is. It'll kind of, it'll be a little more gentle. But I like to just really manually control. So from here, let's listen. See how there was that dip? But if we like really space this out. You see what I mean? You can really manually control them there. But if you're like, okay, well, I only want to do minor, just, you know, really just fade in and then fade out at the very end. Just that way it's not with the sound. Go up to the top here where it says clip on the very top left. And then literally fade in. And it's going, okay, you want to start here and then fade in. Grab this first box here and bring him over. Just so it's a little bit, just a whoop. Maybe you want it to be a little more dramatic on the fade. This is kind of a hard example because of the specific sound, but you can control how you want that fade. What's really going to make a difference is that ending, because remember it was a little bit abrupt when it stopped. So we'll go to fade out, add that fade out. I want it to only be maybe after the ribbit. So then we can hear how it will kind of gradually get quieter. That way it's not just and it stops the sound suddenly. You know, you have a little bit more of that gradual stuff. So now this section, oh my gosh, my phone is going crazy. Stop. So now when we hear that sound effect added in, I've unmuted all of these.
Don't settle for boring. Light up the room with no sun neon lights. Looking for a space frog? Neon.
It's not it's not exactly how I had it, the one for class, but let me know if this didn't make sense. But then if you're like, okay, cool, that's the sound I want. Now I want to add in my music. You can literally have your music set up in this top left corner here. Select your sound, like literally drag and pull it into this. And it will say like, hey, this isn't the right file. Do you want us to convert it? Yeah, go for it. So then it's converted. Cool. Now we've got this nice big, yay. What do we want to use? And so sometimes what you can do is literally just get that bracket again and go, I only want this section for some weird reason. You can do that. But maybe you want to use, you know, like this chunk and then this chunk. This is where you can use that razor tool, like I mentioned earlier, and actually go, I want boop him, and then we'll use the bracket here to really just delete all this, so that now we can, you know, go back to your move tool up here. That way you're not just still cutting. Go grab your move tool and then be like, okay, now I want to boop him together. But you'll also just want to make sure that that the beats line up. You know, you don't want to just smash stuff together. You want to make sure there's still the right tempo, the right rhythm of the music. But you'll also, you know, bring down the volume so that it's not too loud. You don't want it competing with your voice. And when I said clash earlier with the sounds, what I mean is if you have all of these way too loud, then it's just going to be a jumble of noise. Like if I never lowered these two and I've got this massive amount of music right here, it's just going to be crowded.
Don't settle for boring. Light up the room with no sun neon lights. Looking for a space frog?
That section is chaotic. You know what I mean? And so that's why what we'll do is we'll lower the volume of him, lower the volume of the frog, lower the volume of the space so that it's below the volume of your voice, because your voice is what matters the most. And, maybe you still want your music in that, but the music is not the focus of that section. So what you can do is like I was showing you earlier with the volume, and that's what I did in this particular assignment is I thought, okay, well, I still want the music, but I don't want it to just be abrupt and stop. So I selected a section on the volume bar here and went, okay, you just click it until you get that dot. I want you to be quieter, and you can decide, do I still want to kind of hear it? Do I not want to hear it at all? Whatever. Maybe you want to lower it just a little bit. But then once the sound effect goes away, maybe I want to start to hear my music again. So when you get to this section, and we'll go ahead and lower these too so they're not crazy. Go back here and just give it a listen.
Sun neon lights. Looking for a space frog? Neon drinks for the...
So notice how the music was a little bit quieter. Maybe we want okay, that's not quiet enough. So we'll lower it a little bit more. Try it again.
Sun neon lights. Looking for a space frog? Neon drinks for the ball.
So this was a little jarring just for the sample, but you get the gist of it. You can have this work nice and smooth just depending on how you play with it and if you actually have good sounds going on. Something I was curious about is if your file is too big, do you have a section sitting really far off to the side that maybe you didn't quite delete? And so one thing that you could do, if you're like, I don't know if I have something sitting out there, obviously you can look up at this bar at the top here and you'll see the colors of each track. But one thing I've learned is, I added this big old song file. So now the stuff I'm working with is tiny way over here. I'm not going to be using all this. So what you can do is right click on it. Oh, it's not showing up. You get a drop down menu that says zoom in time, zoom out time, zoom reset time. You can zoom in on the thing, you can zoom out that, rather than manually changing the size of the bar. But if you do zoom reset, it changes to it adapts this bar based on how big your project is. And so if you're like, well, that's still not right. Oh, I haven't deleted this yet. This thing. So maybe you grab what you're not going to use, delete it. Go back up here, right click on zoom reset, and it will boop change this to fit your project again. And you can also kind of, if you select it all, I know when you're in single, like when you're in the waveform and you're looking through a specific, you're like, okay, obviously when I'm recording, I have these extra tails of time. But when I do the final demo, I'm only going to be using this much. At the bottom right corner here where it says selection view, so the selection I have here, it started at 0.7 seconds and ends here, but it also will tell you this is 13.98 seconds long. So if you're like, I don't know, if you're just recording your voice and you're like, I don't know if what I've recorded is too long or not because of the tails, you can select just your audio and it will tell you like, okay, this section you're working with is this long. When you go back to the multi-track, it also has that view down here, the selection view, maybe, if my computer will react. There we go. And so let's see, the selection, what's happening here? I've not quite figured out for the multi-track. I don't usually use it for that because I usually look up at the top here. Let's say I want to go ahead and wrap this up. This is where my audio ends. Okay, I'll go ahead and select because I don't want to go too much farther than my vocals here. So what I might do is go just like a smidge after, cut my audio to the end, and then do the whole go up to clip, fade out, yes, grab that and go, no, I only want you to start fading out about here. So then once it's done, the music should fade out.
Because neon lights up your life.
Rather than just abruptly stopping. But we don't want music going on forever because our demo should be 10 seconds long. Because you can see the time bar up here. But for the sake of this, I hope that made sense. I realize this video is a lot of rambling. Please let me know if you have any questions or if something didn't make sense. That was the same thing worded differently. I'm tired. It's 11:34 at night and I'm trying to make this video because I care and I want to be able to help in any way that I can. This was a very strange way to do it, but I hope that it answered some of your questions. Please let me know if it helped, if it didn't help, if you want me to not do this again or do this again. I'm happy to do whatever you need. Okay, see you, bye.